Hi class, welcome to a mini lecture on studying that works. General psychology is a huge class. We have somewhere between 14 and 16 chapters typically in an average psych textbook, and it's just a massive quantity of information. There's a million concepts, tons of vocabulary that you have to learn, and most of it is going to be pretty unfamiliar to you. So you won't have sort of a point of reference for putting it into your brain. Because it is such a massive quantity of information, sometimes I find that students don't do as well on the first exam as they do on subsequent exams because they underestimate how much effort it's going to take to really learn the information. So I want to kind of head off that problem early by this week giving you some information about how to study for this class. So a lot of this information is taken from the book Small Teaching by James Lang, so credit to him. He says, you can't think creatively about information unless you have information in your head to think about. Sometimes people want to make the argument that because everything is on Google and we can quickly look everything up, that we don't need to memorize facts anymore. But I hope you can see that that is a very strange idea. Think about math facts, for example. Did you all have to learn your math facts when you were in elementary school? I assume that you probably did. And the reason that it's important and that they spend a lot of time quizzing you on being really fluent with your math facts is because you can't move on and do higher level math like algebra unless you've got the basic math down. You have to have those math facts quickly and easily available at your fingertips, or you're not going to be able to do the more complex thinking like algebra, trigonometry, calculus, geometry. So it's the same thing with psychology. It's the same thing with every subject. If I did not have all of the facts memorized that I do about psychology, how would I be able to teach it to you? How would I be able to draw deep connections between the neuroscience chapter and the development chapter and the social psych chapter? How would I be able to integrate all of that? How would I be able to come up with creative assignments for you? I couldn't do it. I have to have the facts within me in order to be able to use them. So this is why we are asking you to memorize these facts and to really learn them and get them into your mind, because once they're in your mind and you've truly learned the facts, then you can think creatively about that information and you can go out and apply that to your job, to the world, to your family, to yourself. Little story from Lang's book. He says that he was going to a coffee shop while writing the book every single day, and every day there was the same barista, and she would always say, "Can I help you?" And he would always, every single time, say, "Medium green tea, hot, no honey or lemon." And so after several months of doing this, he's sort of chuckling to himself and thinking, how does she not know my order? I've been coming every day, 4 or 5 times a week, ordering the exact same thing. And so he might say medium green tea, and she would ask, hot or cold? Do you want anything in it? And it was always the same information. And so one day he thinks to himself, she's just not putting the information into her mind, because she hasn't really stopped to try to do that. And so one day he says, "Can you guess?" when she says, "Can I help you?" And she kind of goes, medium green tea? And he says, "Yes, that's right." And they discuss whether it's hot or honey or lemon, and she laughs and says, "Okay, I'll remember it next time." And the next time he goes in, she says, "Hey, medium green tea, hot, no honey or lemon." And he says, "Yes, that's right." And he thinks to himself how much this is like our students, because he's an English professor. Many students, sit in class and sort of passively receive the information, or read the textbook and are sort of passively receiving the information, just like the barista was passively receiving the information about his order. But once she just was quizzed one time, "Can you remember what my order is?" then she was able to retrieve it. And she never forgot it after that. Now, if we quiz our students and sort of require them to retrieve the information from their mind. You know what that does? It helps them learn, just like retrieving the information the one time helped the barista learn the order. Retrieving the information from your mind, when I ask you to do that, that will help you retrieve the information and learn it really, really well. There's an interesting study by Brown, Rediger, and McDaniel in 2014 that showed that brief, low-stakes, multiple-choice quizzing 3 times during a chapter raised students' grades by a full letter grade. Let me unpack that for a second. So these were brief quizzes, 5 or 10 questions. They were low stakes, which means that they weren't graded. And they were multiple choice. And they did it 3 times during a chapter. They did it at the beginning of the chapter, at the end of the chapter, and then one more time before taking the test. And so this is a scientific study, right? So let's start to think about research methods. So some students got this treatment. This is where they were given these 3 quizzing times during learning the chapter. And another group of students were given different things. Some of them just had extra study time. Some of them just had extra teaching by the teacher. And they compared the 3 groups, and they find that if you were quizzed 3 times over the material, it raised your letter grade, a full letter grade, compared to the other treatments. So what does that say? It says that when we practice retrieving information from our brain, that helps the learning. It helps it to stay there. It helps us to truly learn. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to do lots of multiple choice quizzing. I know that sounds a little dull, but I promise it's not a dull class. My students really enjoy the class. We're going to do lots of fun application stuff too, but I'm going to give you just real short, low stakes quizzes at the beginning of the chapter, in the middle of the chapter as you're going through the video lectures. It won't be 3 times. Some of this you may have to do on your own. But I'm going to give you those chances. And I think what that's going to do for you is I think it's going to really help you learn. And I think it's going to help you get good grades. Cognitive psychologists will tell you that reading notes over and over is just about the most ineffective strategy a student can use. And unfortunately, it's the most common one too. And I did it too, guys. I was a college student for many, many years. And I would read through my notes. And yes, that can sometimes help you just get through an exam. But let me ask you, if you have succeeded on exams by doing this, by reading your notes, did you really learn the material? Did you know it 3 months later? My guess is probably not. For most of you. For some of you, you probably did. So reading your notes over and over is not the way to study for a Gen Psych test. It is not going to work for the majority of you. So I want to give you a few active learning options. Okay, so first of all learning, all true, genuine learning is active. If it doesn't feel effortful, it's not real learning. And I think that's why we just sit and read through our notes, because we're cognitively lazy. All of us are. I am, you are. And it's much easier to just simply read notes and think, oh, I'm doing something. But if it's not hurting you a little bit, if it's not feeling like, oh, this is work, then you're probably not really learning. So when we're learning, we want to do a couple of things. We want to construct and connect meaning. We want to construct meaning out of what we're seeing and connect it up to what we already know. And we want to test ourselves repeatedly. Okay. I'm going to describe to you 6 active learning strategies, and then I'm going to give you a little assignment to practice this. So quizzing yourself with a friend, with questions in the book, with example questions. So I'm going to give you some chances in Blackboard to quiz yourself pretty regularly. The textbook has some boxes off to the side that say test yourself. I think that's what they say. I want you to do those as you read the textbook. That will help you. Okay. Find a study partner over Zoom or something like that, or have your parent or your boyfriend or your girlfriend give you some questions. Just read and then look up and say to yourself, can I repeat this information that I just read? Those are ways of quizzing yourself. Okay, number 2, create visuals in your mind. I will never forget this one student I had several years ago. She was really adept at creating visuals in her mind. It's like her mind just worked that way. She didn't even have to try. Most of us are going to have to try. But we were learning the parts of the brain, and she said to me that she was imagining for the hippocampus, she was imagining a hippopotamus lumbering around campus, going into classrooms, sitting in a classroom, and learning material, because the hippocampus is involved in memory and learning. So she's got this great visual, all the details of what an elephant looks like, and visualizing her campus, visualizing a classroom, visualizing the elephant in the classroom learning. Do you think she ever forgot what the hippocampus did? I'll bet she didn't. So create visuals in your mind. And this is a bit effortful, but it's really effective. Number 3, become a teacher. A lot of my students find that they're really excited by the information and that they like to go and tell their significant other or a parent or a family member about what they're learning. And that's you becoming a teacher. When you sit down and try to explain a concept to somebody else, that forces you to really process that information. And it's retrieval practice too, because you're not reading it from your notes, you're just pulling it from your brain. So it's a little bit like quizzing, but it's a little bit more expanded because you're trying to teach it to someone. And you know what? If you don't have a significant other that you, or somebody that you live with, teach it to your dog, teach it to the mirror, teach it to a stuffed animal, teach it to a pillow, teach it to a broom. That'll work too. Number 3, relate it to your experience. So in the learning chapter, we do some difficult concepts about learning. One of them is operant conditioning, where we are rewarded or punished for certain behaviors. And so another one is where we are classically conditioned into certain behaviors. Classical conditioning is where some kind of consequence has been related, or two things have been paired often enough that now we associate them. So a dog who's been abused, and they see the hand coming toward them, they've associated that hand with a bad outcome. And so once the dog gets adopted out and they see the hand coming toward them, even though it's coming toward them in love to pet them or something like that, they may flinch. Okay, so relate it to your experience. Think, oh yeah, I remember I can apply it to this, to this, my puppy that I adopted from the shelter, who still kind of flinches when I reach out my hand to pet him. Number 5, draw a concept map. Let me show you this picture right here. This is a concept map. This is kind of a fancy one, and yours doesn't have to be that fancy. But what they've done here is they put health in the middle, and then they're just drawing lines out. Okay, and so health to this person has to do with the environment and getting fresh air. It has to do with their physical state, such as not smoking, engaging in sports, doing some good sleeping. It has to do with food, drinking, eating, not having alcohol. It has to do with medicine. It has to do with spiritual connection, all of these things. And the spiritual connection is having a hobby, having loving relationships, being in a good mood. So they've put the main idea in the middle and then just start brainstorming and branching out. So that is a concept map. And then finally, number 6 is a mnemonic device. And you've been using mnemonic devices all your life. You learned Roy G. Biv, the colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, green, blue, violet. If you were in music, you probably learned Every Good Boy Does Fine for the notes on the treble clef. You probably learned PEMDAS when you were doing algebra, and I'm going to blank on all of that, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, I think is what it is. So what that is you've taken some list that you have to learn, and you've made up some kind of little funny saying. So it's easier to remember Roy G. Biv, or Every Good Boy Does Fine, or Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, than it is to remember the list of concepts that were difficult. So if you have a list during class that you need to learn, this is a good one. Come up with some kind of mnemonic device. Okay, the last thing that I want you to think about is your study cycle. So oftentimes students want to study the night before in one big long cram session. Sometimes they want to stay up all night and study. That's called massed practice, and that doesn't tend to be particularly effective. What you want to do instead is what's called distributed practice. So instead of like 2.5 hours the night before, study 30 minutes daily for 5 days. This takes advantage of something that happens while you sleep. While you sleep, you consolidate all your memories, and so you actually know something better after you've slept than you do when you haven't slept. That's why cramming the night before is not particularly effective. So do this distributed practice. Study every night for several days before the exam rather than one big lump. Intense short study sessions are much more effective than week-long study sessions. Don't multitask. The phone, the computer, the TV, they all need to be in another room. If your phone is there, and I've done studies with my quasi experiments with my students, and you may do it this semester, where they'll have the phone there while they're studying, and I ask them to keep track of how many times they reach out and look at that, and you'd be amazed at how many times you do that. So put the phone, the computer, the TV in another room. Okay, so